Hi, it's Louisa from UK New Cars. We often get asked lots of questions about the new car buying process, and in particular, we get asked about finance. So we thought we'd create a little series to try and help our customers understand finance further. Today we've got Sam, our Managing Director, who's going to help us answer a few of those questions. So one of the questions that we get asked quite frequently from our customers is if a customer is already in a finance agreement and they want to come out early, how would they go about doing that?
I'm going to focus most of my answers on PCP because that's what most of our customers are looking for, and it's certainly the most flexible of the finance arrangements out there to be able to come out of it early. So if that's what you are looking for, I would strongly recommend PCP over, for example, something like leasing, which is much more inflexible. But I'll come back to that in a moment. With PCP, there are two main ways you can come out of it early. One is you can settle whenever you want, and that's important to remember for a customer. You're in control the whole time. So you would simply contact the finance company that your loan is with, for example, Audi Finance, BMW Finance, and all you need to do is ask them for a settlement figure. They will give you that figure which represents how much of your loan is outstanding at that time, and then to come out of the deal, you would pay off that loan, exit the agreement. Now, you may decide to keep the car, so you're just paying off the loan because you don't want to continue paying interest on the car, or you may decide that you just don't want the car anymore, so you would simply sell your car and pay off what you owe at that time, and then you can look into getting into a new agreement if you want to at the time. But it is important to remember that you as a customer will always be in control of that agreement. There are no penalties for settling early. There might be a small administration charge, but there's typically no penalties for settling early on that if you wanted to go down that route.
You said there were two different elements. What was the other element?
Right, so the second way you can come out of a PCP is for retail customers, so if it's in your own personal name, and that's something called voluntary termination. It's something I particularly like because it allows me to get my calculators out, which I'm a bit of a geek, as you know. With voluntary termination, when you've paid back 50% of the total amount payable on the agreement, you can simply hand the car back and walk away. So effectively, the options you have at the end of the PCP get moved forward to that point when you've paid off half of the loan. Now, it's important to remember that it's not halfway through the loan. A lot of perhaps sales executives at dealership will just say it's 50%. Customers think it's halfway through the agreement. But it's not halfway through the agreement. It's when you've paid half of the total amount payable. So that will include the final balloon payment, any interest charges. We typically find that would be after about 75% of the term of the agreement, but it can vary subject to the deposit level that you leave. With voluntary termination, it would work pretty much like the end of a PCP. You just simply hand the car back. It is obviously subject to the excess mileage potentially if you're over limit, but other than that, you would simply hand the car back like you would at the end of the PCP. But it's also important to remember that the car might be worth more in the real world than you owe at the time. So even if you have reached voluntary termination point, you might want to contact the finance company anyway, understand how much you owe, and even though you can hand the car back, if it's worth more in the real world, you can actually sell it or part exchange it perhaps and pay back what you owe and use whatever equity towards, for example, a deposit on the next car.
Okay, and is that the same with leasing as well?
Very, very good question again. No. So with leasing, it's much more inflexible compared to PCP. With leasing, it's more of a fixed term rental agreement for a car. So you never actually own the vehicle and you're committing to a rental agreement for that period, now typically over 3 years. Now, if you want to come out of that early, you can, but you would have to pay off a proportion of the outstanding amount that you owe on that agreement and still hand the car back. So if, for example, if you're in the second year of a 3-year agreement, you might hand the car back, but you'd still have to pay 50% of what you still owe on the agreement. So you're paying a lot more and you don't have the car anymore. So it's not really advisable. If you are thinking you may wish to come out of it early or you want to retain that flexibility, I strongly recommend you consider PCP over leasing.
So hopefully that's answered some of your questions that you may have had, but if you do have any more questions, please do put it into our comments or give us a shout and we'll be more than happy to help and answer any questions that you may have.